Welcome, boys and girls. Christine here with a discussion about Medieval 2 Total War, and on the subject of a remastered version of Medieval 2. A couple of days ago, Legend of Total War did a video on the subject, and he also launched a petition to push for a Medieval 2 remastered. Now, I think that's good. I think that if you grew up playing Medieval 2, either in your teenage years or younger, like myself, like I started when I was in my teenage years, if you grew up playing Rome and Medieval 2, then having a remastered version of the game would be great, in theory. I think that there's a lot of elements in Medieval 2 that would actually work quite well in the modern age. But I will also stress out that it needs to be done properly. And it cannot be a similar situation to Rome Remastered. Rome Remastered was nothing short of a disaster. I know people will disagree on that, but we can look at the statistics. The concurrent player count of Rome Remastered was pretty pathetic. In fact, I think it's actually worse than Pharaoh, and it's certainly worse than Thrones of Britannia. So it is one of the worst performing quote-unquote Total War games, even if it is a remastered version of an older game. But just because it's a remastered version doesn't mean that it can't get a lot of players. I mean, you look at Oblivion Remastered, it's getting a lot of players. But here's the thing. Medieval 2, similar to Rome, is not the kind of game where you can just slap some textures, make it run on a modern engine, or make it run better on an older engine, and call it a day. Because unlike quite a few other games that have gotten remastered, Medieval 2 does have certain inherent issues that Creative Assembly would need to resolve in order to make it worth it. And if they don't resolve the issues that Medieval 2 has, then you're just going to see a repeat of the Rome Remastered situation. A lot of hype pre-launch, and then practically nothing. That did happen in Rome Remastered. I don't want to see that happen with Medieval 2. I want the remastered version of Medieval 2 to be certain on this, but I want it done properly. So what are the kind of issues, and what do I think Creative Assembly needs to do? Well, I firmly disagree with Legend on the subject that they should just basically make a cheap-ass port. Because that's essentially the argument he was making. Just slap a fresh coat of paint on it, release it, and that would work. I don't think that would work at all. I think it would get very little attention. I think from every perspective, if you're a content creator, if you're a player, if you're Creative Assembly, it just doesn't make sense. Like, Medieval 2 is the kind of game that could be phenomenal if they remastered properly and could actually work very well in the modern age, but not if they handle it poorly. So it can't just be cheap. It can't just be a situation that we've seen with other games where they just, put some graphics, don't solve any of their underlying issues, don't improve anything of the underlying game, and then call it a day. There are games that have been remastered, including Command & Conquer. Yes, you remember that Command & Conquer Remastered? It wasn't really that great of a remaster. Like, that's also a tragic situation. And it's kind of a tragedy because I guess it convinced EA that people just weren't interested in that, though. You know what's kind of the shame about it? Like Red Alert 1, Tiberium 1, yeah, those are not really great games if you're not going to change the gameplay and just stick with the very old stuff. But if you do remaster Red Alert 2, that would be a phenomenal game to play right now. It just happens when companies make these business decisions, and the people making these decisions have no actual understanding of how the games work. So that is something worth saying on that subject. Quite the sad situation. With Medieval 2, here are the issues that I would see with the game. First off, from a campaign perspective, outside of how the map looks and some of the imbalances of that map, because yes, they do exist, and there are things that are absolutely broken, but outside of those kind of imbalances, I think the campaign systems of Medieval 2, like with Rome, work very well. Yes, I'm going to say that. Again, there's imbalances, and it wasn't necessarily to Rome Remastered's favor. The way the UI worked, yeah, it was pretty awful as a UI, I'm going to say it. That's my view on it. Not really appealing. But that fundamental campaign systems were great for Rome, Which is why one of the good points about Rome Remastered is that campaign systems work. So they could take the same campaign structure, campaign systems, and put that in a Medieval 2 remastered version, and I think for the most part it would work. Balance issues aside, but even if they changed absolutely nothing with regards to the balance, I think that would function. Modders would probably step in. What they need to deliver is a good performance situation and maybe a pretty-looking map, really. Let's be honest, the maps of Rome 1 and Medieval 2 weren't the prettiest things to look at. But they did work, that's the important thing, and they still work in this day and age. The fundamental issues, though, have to do with balancing, have to do with AI, and have to do with pathfinding and battles. I do actually have a much better opinion of sieges in Medieval 2 than maybe a lot of people. Like, there are still issues, don't get me wrong, but sieges can be interesting in Medieval 2, even if the best strategy is still to artillery spam and win the crap out of it. But it does work. It does work, and it can create some very fun and interesting and fulfilling battles, really, from my perspective. But if they were just going to take the same battle system, the same pathfinding, the same AI, and just put that with a fresh coat of paint, that would not work right now. There would be people who would buy it, a lot of people wouldn't, and you'd see a repeat of Rome Remastered. That's the reality of it. So what I think they need to fix is they need to improve the pathfinding, how individual units and how the individual models, rather, in a unit work, how units behave, engage in combat to one another, how the AI makes decisions in both campaign and in battle, and also make sure that the UI is looking really good and all that kind of stuff. Though surprisingly, I think the Medieval 2 UI really does hold up in a lot of different ways. And I think, like, even the balance holds up a lot better than Rome Remastered. Yeah, Rome had issues in a way that Medieval 2 didn't. That's my view. So I think, like, Medieval 2 is a better baseline, because it already was a better baseline back in the day, than Rome. But those are the kind of things. If they do these things, then a lot of people will play it, a lot of people will buy it, and it will really please the historical fans, including myself. Like, for the record, I do want a good historical game. But if they don't fix that, it'll just be a complete disaster. So I think they have two options with respect to this. Or three options. The first option is trying to release some cheap shit. That would not work. The second option would be to try and fix these issues in the existing engine. Like improve pathfinding, improve AI, all those kind of things, right? Beyond new textures, etc. Or if they're using a new engine, make sure those issues do get resolved. I think it's ludicrous to argue that it would be that difficult to do so. Like, I know pathfinding, but gotta understand, game development has come a long, long freaking way. I've seen indie developers with much better pathfinding and AI in their games than this. I mean, again, lots of years have passed, things have changed, things have improved. So, they could do that. They absolutely could do that, and I think they should do that. That's one option. The second option, or really the third option, would be to recreate Medieval 2 in the current Total War engine. And I'm not talking the Warhammer engine, for the record on this subject. Although I think there are certainly aspects of the Warhammer engine that would work, like cavalry charges can be freaking awesome in the current engine, melee combat can be good. But what I'm really thinking about is Pharaoh. I know, but hear me out. Pharaoh, for all its bad reputation, actually did have a really solid engine behind it, performance-wise. The AI, yeah, not the best in the world, but still certainly much better than the Medieval 2 AI. But what was important is, like, you had things like a shield wall formation, being able to clash and then pull back slowly against the enemy. Cavalry charges are hard to judge by, because obviously Pharaoh was not really focused on that, though we did have cavalry in Pharaoh, and it was pretty fun. Like, I'm gonna say it, like, range combat, melee combat, cav combat, not chariot combat, those actually worked really well. So you already have an engine that CA used for a game that can do those things. In fact, one of the tragedies of Pharaoh really is that because it was so unpopular, there's no modding scene, because the amount of stuff you could do in the Pharaoh engine would be amazing. Like, seriously, it would probably be the best engine for a historical Total War mod. or anything like that, or a Lord of the Rings mod. I'm not joking on that. Like, use the baseline, create that, make it work, or an Alexander campaign. Like, seriously, I think, like, Rome Remastered would have worked much better in that context. And that's what I would like to see for Medieval 2. How difficult it would be for them to port the assets from Medieval 2, like the unit balance, the stats, and all that, that's probably very easy. The models, different discussion. The big question mark, I think, would be the campaign map, really, because obviously the campaign mechanics of Pharaoh work very differently than the campaign mechanics of Medieval 2. So that would be the big problem I see. Like, the battles, I think, would work really well, and would probably not be the hardest thing to do. How they would handle blood, that's its own discussion, but I do think they could make it work very well. So that's what I would like to see with our Medieval 2 Remastered. If they're not willing to put an effort, then it's just not going to work. Flat out. It's going to do poorly, it's not going to generate interest. You might see a lot of mods re-released because there's a lot of people dedicated to that kind of stuff. Sure, but you're not going to have the player base for it. And frankly, I think Medieval 2 deserves better. I think we as fans of Total War that have played Total War for a very long time want to see that being handled better. And as for the discussion about whether or not it would be worth making a Medieval 3, I think that's a discussion in its own right on the subject. For what it's worth, I would like to see a Medieval 3. Again, like, there's elements, especially with, like, battles and shield walls and all that kind of stuff. And lethality, yes, I know some people may not agree with that, but I think lethality is a really fucking great system. Maybe not the balancing of it. But there's a lot of elements that CA Sofia made work for that game, and it's actually quite the tragedy they didn't continue supporting it, because I think it had a lot more potential after Dynasties came out. Not launch, but after Dynasties. So I do think that Medieval 2 would work well in that, from that perspective. As for a Medieval 3, I don't know if CA would want to do that. And I don't think we would necessarily see that anytime soon. The rumors, the leaks, if you will, on the subject have been as follows. That we would get a World War I game, like this is what Legend himself has stated. We would get a World War I game. And then they decided to cancel it. And it's not just Legend. There were other people talking about this as well. So, and there's also been rumors around an Empire 3. But we'll see about that. Like, I would really like a Medieval 3, personally. Like, I would really want to see that kind of that kind of game done in a really good and sensical way. But I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. Like, I think it's more likely to get an Empire 3 than it is to get a Medieval 3 right now, which is kind of weird when you think about it. But I mean, I suppose the impetus behind the decision to release Medieval 2 was Kingdom of Heaven. Really, just like you had Troy the movie creating an impetus behind certain other things as well. Anyway, that is my perspective on the subject. Let me know what you guys think about it. Like, I would like to see it happen, but I would like to see it happen in the right way, because I would not want to see a repeat of Rome Remastered. Also, performance. Like, Rome Remastered ran badly. Like, really badly. Even the new models don't look that great, and the UI, jeez. Well, I guess that's what you get when you have a company that makes mobile ports. And judging them, you know, they might do a good job for mobile ports, but releasing basically a mobile port version of Rome on PC probably was never going to work that well. We'll see on that. Kostin signing out.